In today's video, I've got 3 essential tips for painting negative backgrounds. I'm going to be showing you the process that I go through to put a foliage background behind this Buddha statue that I'm painting here in the background. So let's get started with the first of these essential tips. So you're looking at a photograph and indeed a half-painted picture that I'm doing at the moment for my Patreon subscribers. So this one's available on tier 2 and 3 of my Patreon. It also may be released in the future as a mini course. Make sure you're on my mailing list to get those discounts on mini courses when they first come out. They normally get issued at a very, very low price. But meantime, I'm going to start putting the background in this picture and we're going to use negative painting. Now, I'm often asked to do negative painting tutorials. The truth is, pretty much every painting I do has some negative painting in it. If you're not sure what negative painting is, what we're going to do is put a layer of light colour across, and then we're going to pick out these light areas by going in with darks behind. Now, negative painting can be very simple, it can be very complex, involving many layers. I'm going to keep it simple in this case. And my first tip for you is when you put your underwash of colour on, don't just choose one colour, drop multiple colours in. I'm going to squeeze out some paints. I'm using a very limited palette for this picture. We're going to use some yellows and some blues. I've also got a little bit of Perylene Violet, and we're going to go in with that background wash first of all, but we're going to do it in multiple colours so that when we outline, when we have these areas left afterwards, they're going to look really, really interesting and not just flat colour. So I've got some cobalt blue. That'll be great for these very blue based leaves. I've got some very warm diarylide yellow. I've got some cadmium lemon. I've got some very strong phthalo blue green shade, and I've got the Perylene Violet here in a little pot. This is hard paint, so I'm going to take this straight from the pot. I've also got a large brush, some clean water and some paper towels. So I'm working directly in here and I'm just placing colours and clean water on the paper, trying not to allow this edge here to dry at all. It's looking a bit like a rainbow at the moment. That's not really my intention, and I will just break that up a bit. And I'm looking as well, I've got the photograph still in my eyeline, and I'm looking to see where the bright yellows are, where the greens are. I haven't got many greens going on here, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of phthalo blue. You want to be careful with this colour, it's incredibly strong. Just allowing these colours to blend here. If you do get any drying lines or backgrounds, it's not going to be the end of the world, because this is just an underneath layer for what's going on later on. And I can get a huge variety of colours here. You'll notice that none of them are going to be too dark. For the overall painting, I will do this painting in more than one layer, so we're not just going to have light with a dark background around, because there are some midtones as well. But I'm using this first layer to reserve those lightest areas. Coming up to the edge of this Buddha now, but of course you can use this technique for any subject, and I'll take this paint neatly around the edge. I'm going to continue working all the way around until I get right round to the other side. So you can see I'm continuing to place these bright colours on the paper and just allow them to blend naturally so that we get this beautiful muted background. I'm also considering, as I go around the Buddha, where is going to be light and where's going to be dark. If the Buddha's dark, we're going to want some light surrounding him. Those are mostly decisions that will be made as we go on with the painting and putting the darks in. But if you have a think ahead to them, it won't do you any harm. So you can see that by working on dry paper, I'm able to come up really neatly to the edge of the Buddha. Keeping this lot wet can be difficult, so don't be afraid to just throw some clean water on. It's not going to be the end of the world if you get a few backgrounds. I think I've got a bit more of that bright yellow in here in the middle, so I want to really go in with those sunny colours. And most of the sunny colours are around this central area here rather than down at the base, so we're going to place those in. If you're trying to avoid backgrounds, then a good thing is to try and keep the water levels fairly even, and I'll go into more muted colours as I get to the corners and the base. You want the brightest stuff to be really around the Buddha. So you can see how I've taken this colour all the way around, and it's really a relief at this stage to sort of knock out all of the white in the background, because a complex background like this can seem really overwhelming. And by going in at the beginning with these lovely mottled colours, we eliminate all of that white paper and it instantly feels more achievable. If you are enjoying this video, can I ask you to do me a quick favour? Can you please click that like button, that thumbs up button? If you like, share, subscribe, or leave me a comment here on YouTube, all of these things are free. It will help my channel to grow and I can teach more people like you how to paint and draw. So the background is complete and dry, and my tip number 2 is to do the drawing after the background has dried. So in a lot of cases you might think to yourself, well, I'll do all that drawing first and throw the background colour on, then work up the layers. But every time you put paint on top of pencil, you're trapping it underneath that layer. So you want to leave it as late as possible. It'll erase much more easily if you put it on during later layers. And also it's something I do a lot of the time anyway in my own paintings, because it allows me to stop myself getting confused by having too much information on the page in one go. Of course, you need to have the layout correct. I needed to have the Buddha in the right place and the right size. But after that, I can afford to draw the foliage in later on. So what I'm going to do now is start drawing these areas of fern in order that I get the top layers correct and that I manage to reserve all of these beautiful underneath colours that we've done. So I'm looking at drawing these ferns now and even putting in some details. So considering at this point how much drawing to do, I've got an impression of this. I've got some of the bits that I want the lightest, I've got those in some detail, and then I've got just shapes for some of these leaves. I've got some leaves at the bottom here, and I'm looking, areas like this, I really don't need to draw those in, but we've got some very distinct shapes here. We've got these sort of stems here, and some of the little leaves coming off them as well are very light. And then we've got these shapes around here. That's the only other thing that I'm going to draw at this stage. And once I've done all of those, I'll be ready for the next stage. So tip 3 is to use masking fluid, but we're only going to use it for the lightest areas. So if you look at the photograph here, I've got dark areas in the background. I've got mid-tones here on the plants, but I've also got some very light areas on the plants. So those are the areas we're going to use the masking fluid for. If you use too much masking fluid, you can end up tearing your paper. It can end up looking very harsh and unnatural, but just to get a few of these light areas is going to look really lovely. So I've got my masking fluid. I've got some Schmincke white masking fluid here. I like the coloured one, but I have found the coloured one stains my paper, and I'm looking at just getting the lighter areas. These centre stems actually are quite a nice thing to preserve. Now it's possible that some of the background colour may come off with the masking fluid. That occasionally happens. It's not the end of the world if it lifts a little bit of the pigment out. It should mostly be fine, particularly if you have at this stage allowed your background to dry, and you really must only apply masking fluid on bone dry paper. So if you're painting on it 10 minutes ago, it's unlikely to be dry enough. You want to leave it, a few hours or even overnight until you start messing around with masking fluid. And masking fluid works best when it's just applied in small areas. And I'm just going to, I'm going to keep looking at the areas that are hit by the sun and applying the masking fluid to those areas only. So for the next stage, I'm going to put my mid-tones in. Now at this stage, you could sort of, just paint broad areas for these leaves, and then you could get the little gaps in between the leaves when you put that dark background in with the negative painting. That's really the explanation of what negative painting is. I tend to paint a bit more precisely and then paint more precisely around in the background. It all depends, what your subject is and how neatly you yourself are able to paint. So I've got a bit of this blue colour here. This particular leaf here, we haven't defined any fronds, as it were, any little leaf serrations. I'm still going to go in with more than one colour just because it's going to make it much more interesting, and I'm heading towards keeping those mid-tones. So I need to go darker than that first layer in order that the masking fluid shows up and we get some nice lights picked out, but I don't want to go so dark that when I put my dark background in, when I do my negative painting, it doesn't show up. So this is the stage where I put the mid-tones on. So you can see I've been working on this area here. Now I wouldn't normally work one area up of a painting without doing the whole thing. This is just because I'm showing you here on YouTube. I'm giving you a bit of a advanced look, as it were. So I'm going to go in now. I've got some phthalo blue here, and this is going to give me a much stronger, darker green. If I want it to be a warm dark green, I can use the warm yellow. In this case, I think I want it in this particular area to be a fairly cool dark green. I can also put bits and pieces of other colours in, like the violet I'm using. But just for this example, what I'll do is I'll show you with using some lemon. And we're going to go in behind, and you've got to use this dark colour to pick out the colours in front. So not using a tiny brush, but a fairly small brush, and come along like this. I can go in behind, and what I can do is I can use this paintbrush then to make foreground shapes. So for example, this one here that we didn't actually have any leaf serrations in, I can pop them in. Now, if you'd like to see this finished painting, I mean, if you're watching this video the day it's come out, the painting isn't finished yet, but providing you're watching it a week or so after it's been put up, you'll be able to see this finished painting. You can either pop over to my Facebook group, or you can have a look on Instagram. I'll pop it on there as well. And can you see that as we go in dark behind, we start to let these foreground shapes show? Now, I haven't removed the masking fluid quite yet, though I could have done, because I quite like the fact that it's there, and if I go over any edges, then it may just sort of stop me from making a mess. Thank you so much for watching this 3 essential tips video. Before you leave this video, don't forget to have a look in the video description. I've got lots of free stuff down there for you. I've got free downloadable PDFs with art tips on. I've even got a free watercolor painting mini course that you can take. Don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and you can watch another one of my videos right now.